guys, let's get started. Are there any questions about exam number 2, which the grades I posted on Monday, and also the distribution of grades? The average was at 85.1%, so a bit higher than last time, as we had all expected, and great for you guys. I had mentioned in lecture last time, if you weren't here on Monday, that there was one question that everyone got credit for because we realized it was ambiguous. The short answer grading rubric is also available on DSpace under the Exam 2 Resources tab. And you'll be getting it in section. You'll get a chance to look it over in section, just like exam number 1. Are there any questions about that exam, the grading of it, etc.? Are we all good? I strongly encourage, if you did not get the grade you anticipated or hoped for, that you speak to your DSI or come to my office hours. But do it quickly because you need to start focusing already on the third exam, although we have a little bit more breathing room, given that the third exam will be during the exam review, actual final exam period, even though it's not a final exam. Okay, one of the GSIs made me realize after lecture on Monday that I didn't actually finish one last point I wanted to make on group processes, because I mind blank for a second, and I got so anxious and eager to start talking about attraction relationships. So I do want to give attention to this last study, because one of you in this class, I can't remember who it was, came up to me after lecture on the group processes week. You recall we were ended the lecture talking about de-individuation, this idea that when you lose the sense of individuality, sort of there's a loosening of the typical constraints that lead us to engage in moral, non-deviant, socially appropriate behavior. One of you guys rushed up to me afterwards and said, aren't there cultural differences in this? Cultural differences? You know, what if a culture is typically focused very much on doing what is good for society versus what is good for the individual, such as robbing a bank? Wouldn't you get a difference? And I wanted to address that point because the last study that I wanted to tell you about is making a point along those lines. And that point is that de-individuation, though most of the research and certainly most media attention that's ever been given to de-individuation focuses on its negative effects, how de-individuation explains things like mob behavior, rioting behavior, violent behavior, all these sort of deviant kinds of behaviors. It's not necessarily the case that de-individuation, feeling lost in the crowd, has to lead to negative kinds of behavior. And I want to give you one empirical example of this, and it's related to the notion that there may be cultural differences in what de-individuation leads to. In other words, in certain cultures, it might not lead to negative behavior, it might even lead to more positive kinds of behavior. So bear with me in this study. It's one of those elaborate social psychology studies where they brought in female participants. All participants were female, undergraduates, and they came into the lab, and they were told that this was going to be a group task, and they were all seated in separate cubicles. They didn't see each other, but that they wanted to give the group a sense of groupiness, so they would be taking Polaroids of each of the participants and posting them in each of the other participants' cubicles so they would get a sense that they were part of a group. So this was published in 1979. I hope you still do know what a Polaroid is. It's one of those cameras that shoots out the picture right away. Allegedly, then, the experimenter says, we don't want people's individual characteristics to influence, how you perceive other people, and we really want to create a sense of groupiness, so we're going to have you guys all wear some sort of standardized uniform. Okay, this was the cover story they gave. Here's the first independent variable. In one condition, they say, here, why don't you just put on these nurses' uniforms? I have this friend who works in the hospital, and she can give me access to all these nurses' uniforms. So everybody just put on this, and we can have a standardized group, no individual characteristics showing, and so forth. So half the people are asked to wear nurses' uniforms. The other half of people are given these Ku Klux Klan-looking robes to wear instead, and they're told something like, oh, God, our seamstress, who's working for this experiment, they're not very good. Sorry, these uniforms are a little bit weird, okay? They're not just weird. They look like Ku Klux Klan uniform robes, okay? So independent variable 1 is Ku Klux Klan in the air, and the kinds of things associated with that group, versus nurses' uniforms, and the kinds of norms and behaviors associated with being a nurse, taking care of others, helping others, and so forth. Okay, so the experiment goes on, and they are told, these 4 female participants, that they're really interested in looking at the effects of arousal on learning, and that in this experiment, there's going to be a male participant who's going to be answering questions. So this is a little Milgram-esque, and each time they get an answer wrong, that this male participant is going to get a baseline level of shock, but that each time the 4 participants get to indicate whether they want to increase or decrease the shock level from this baseline shock level. You with me so far? Now, they had participants over here, this alleged male participant talking to the experimenter. He's a real jerk. Real jerk. So basically, they wanted to, make it plausible that people wouldn't want to shock the guy at all. Okay, so he's obnoxious, he's annoying. So they're setting it up so that they can loosen up the inclination people might have to shock the guy. Okay, ID, independent variable number 2, the only other independent variable. Half the participants wearing either Ku Klux Klan-like uniforms or nurse uniforms are told that their shock choices, whether they want to increase it or decrease the shock level from baseline for this annoying, obnoxious male participant, are going to be identifiable as, that is, linked to them. Like the other participants in the group are going to know that they increased or decreased it. Or that they're told that they're going to just pull these shock choices together and give the average amount of shock based on the average responses of the 4 participants. In other words, their shock choices will be unidentifiable, anonymous. Okay? So you're wearing Ku Klux Klan uniforms or nurses' uniforms, you think your responses are going to be identifiable or not. Okay, before the learning trials began, all participants are led to believe the male learner was obnoxious. Okay, so what is a general finding you would expect in the study based on independent variable number 2? You're identifiable or anonymous. What is likely to happen according to what we know so far about de-individuation? And this guy's kind of a jerk.
If you're unidentifiable, you're more likely to increase the shock.
Yeah, unidentifiable, I'm de-individuated, okay, like increased shock levels. That's what we'd expect from what we know and what people typically think about in terms of the effects of de-individuation. But we've also got this other factor in the air. Okay, it's a group norm independent variable manipulation. Okay, a norm's in the air about being helpful and kind and caring to other people, or aggressive and horrifying toward other people. So here's what they found. For participants wearing those Ku Klux Klan-looking robes, they increased shock levels in both the identifiable and anonymous conditions. Okay, so this has to do presumably with group norms having to do with I'm wearing this Ku Klux Klan thing, it's making me, and there's this guy's a jerk, it's making me feel inclined to shock the guy, but more so in the anonymous condition. Okay, and this is the prediction you would expect. Okay, Ku Klux Klan makes me already inclined to want to increase the shock, and even more so when I'm de-individuated. Okay, like you predicted. But the interesting finding in this study is that those in the nurses' uniforms, not only did they on average decrease shock levels, okay, consistent with the norms associated with the uniforms they were wearing, but when they were de-individuated, when they were anonymous, they decreased shock levels even more. So, but this kind of study is suggesting that de-individuation doesn't necessarily lead to negative behavior. De-individuation, getting lost in the crowd, getting lost in the group, seems to increase adherence to group norms, lead you to behave in line with the group more. You are part of this group. You are a single entity, the single group identity. And if the group norms are positive, instead of actually de-individuation leading to more negative behavior, it may actually enhance positive behavior because those are the norms associated with that group. Okay? So being lost in the crowd, getting lost, Okay, whether that leads to positive or negative behavior appears to depend on who you're losing your individual identity to, a group that is associated with positive behavior or negative behavior. Broader take-home point is that it need not, individuation always lead to negative behavior. Let's see what else I have on the screen. Okay, this is just saying again, if you want it in a nifty little summary statement, de-individuation increases adherence to group norms. If norms call for deviant behavior, then more deviant behavior. But if norms call for more pro-social behavior, then it appears that you get more pro-social behavior. So if cultural norms are very strong for engaging in pro-social behavior, you individuate people, make people feel like they are Japanese. We're just those Japanese people, or whatever culture you're talking about. If the norms for that culture are more positive, you may well get individuation to lead to more positive behavior. Okay, tuck this away. Put it away. We're going back to attraction and relationships and love and satisfaction and so forth. Okay. We addressed factors that the data and many of you believe lead you to be attracted to another person, to want to initiate a relationship with another person. Today, we're going to talk about social psychological perspectives on relationships, okay, beyond the attraction stage. And I've got to say this. I've wanted to say this practically every lecture, but this is one of those topics that it's so painful to have to lecture to you about in one lecture because, I've taught an entire course on close relationships before. So you should definitely keep in mind for all topics, but this one especially, that I'm not doing the best service to these series. There's so much more you can read. Definitely read more in your textbook about these series. Look for courses in the future that I myself or some IDOC might teach on close relationships if you want to know more about what social psychologists have to say about close relationships. So I'm going to sort of give you a sprinkling of ways in which social psychologists have approached the topic of close relationships, tell you about two perspectives that address the question of what are the psychological consequences, what happens to us psychologically, what happens mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, psychologically to us when we get in a relationship, and then I'm going to focus on two theories that really have a lot to say about what predicts relationship satisfaction, what predicts whether your relationship is going to last or not. These are interesting questions that scientists and the average person care a lot about. Okay, so let's start with attachment theory, which is not a theory that is the domain of social psychology originally. How many of you have heard of attachment theory in clinical or developmental psychology? Right, so this is a theory that actually comes more from developmental and clinical psychology, but about 2.5 decades ago, social psychologists sort of discovered the theory and have since then applied it in many, many, many different ways to understanding adult relationships. But before we go there, take your eye clickers out. This will be fun or interesting and anonymous. Okay, which of the following best describes what you're like in relationships? Okay, and this is anonymous, so it's interesting to see the distribution of how you see yourselves, your relationship selves. A, I find it relatively easy to get close to others and I'm comfortable depending on them and having them depend on me. I don't often worry about being abandoned or about someone getting too close. Or B, I'm somewhat uncomfortable being close. I find it difficult to trust other people, completely difficult to allow myself to depend on them. I'm nervous when anyone gets close, and often love partners want to be more intimate than I feel comfortable being. Choose B, that's you, in general. C, I find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. I often worry that my partner doesn't really love me or won't stay with me. I want to merge completely with another person, and this desire sometimes scares people away. So pick the one that is most closely descriptive of how or what you're like in romantic relationships. Let's see if we can get to 2:30 today. Oh, yeah, okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, so let's see the distribution of relationship styles or attachment styles. Okay, we've got, wow. What is this E issue? Okay, no Ds, but 5 Es. Okay, that's really interesting. We have almost equal of the first two categories and considerably less for the third category. I'm going to show you the kinds of results that have been obtained over and over again. Our distribution is a little bit different than what has been obtained many times before. Usually the distribution is that the first category, A, is by far the majority of people categorize themselves that way, and the latter two is about an even split and much less. So maybe 56, 60% for the first category, and then splitting 20-something% for the other two. Whereas we have a lot of A's and B's in this class. Interesting. What does this all mean? Okay. So as many of you know, developmental psychologists and clinical psychologists originally developed attachment theory to understand the relationship, the emotional bond that emerges with regularity between infants and their caregivers in humans and in many other species. This is an adaptive thing. The human infant is thrust out into this world and would not survive on his or her own without forming this bond. Okay, so there's evolutionary adaptive value to forming this emotional bond with one's caregiver, mother typically. Developmental and clinical psychologists were really interested in variations in the nature of this bond between infants and their caregivers. And they designed this paradigm. Anyone know the name of the paradigm? To try to understand variations in people's bond? Yeah. The strange paradigm, the strange situation paradigm. It is strange, and there's also a strange situation paradigm. And what is that paradigm? I don't know it in detail. There are very deliberate phases to this paradigm, but the upshot is they put infants through this paradigm where they are put in situations where they are separated from mommy or caregiver and then reunited with mommy, caregiver, and their behaviors are video recorded, observed, and coded. And over hundreds and hundreds of observations of infants and how they react when mommy goes away and when mommy returns, these researchers culled or noticed that there were sort of 3 basic kinds of attachment bonds, infant-caregiver bonds. What do I have? This one next. Right here, identified 3 what they eventually call 3 attachment styles. And what the researchers argued, this is John Bowlby, a name many of you may have heard of, John Bowlby, Mary Salter Ainsworth. What they argued, and which many people believe, and in fact is sort of a truism in psychology, the field of psychology as a whole, is that infants develop these different kinds of bonds with their caregivers based on their experiences with their caregivers, based on how their caregivers have responded to them. Okay, they're not talking yet even, okay, but they're crying, they're responding, they have needs. My diaper's wet, I'm hungry, I'm scared, I'm tired. Wow, what does mommy do? What does mommy do? What does mommy do when I'm asking her for help in my baby ways? What does mommy do when I'm not asking her for help? How is my caregiver responding to me? What happens to an infant? What kind of attachment bond do they form when a caregiver always responds? Okay, he's very responsive to the child's needs. Baby cries, mommy comes to soothe. Baby cries, a different kind of cry, mommy gives the breast, food. Baby cries or looks scared, mommy comes to the rescue. Okay, what happens? A particular kind of attachment style, known eventually as a secure attachment style, is the kind of attachment these researchers argue. These are the babies who, when separated from mommy in the strange situation paradigm, they're upset, but not overly so. And when mommy comes back, they're reunited with mommy, they beam with delight. Okay, they're understandably a little bit worried when she leaves, but they're absolutely thrilled when she returns. This is a sign, it's argued, of a securely attached infant. What if you have this caregiver that never responds to the child's needs? Okay, baby cries, mommy's not there. What? Yes, avoidant. Okay, the avoidant attachment style. This is a baby in the strange situation paradigm that doesn't have a particular reaction when mommy leaves, nor when mommy returns. There's really a sense of detachment. Okay, and finally, you have the kind of caregiver who, on average, is inconsistent in their responsiveness. Sometimes responds, sometimes doesn't. Where does that leave the infant? It leaves the infant what's known as anxious, okay, and ambivalently attached. They're not sure if they can count on mommy, okay, but they're getting reinforced. Sometimes mommy's coming. So this is a baby that freaks out when mommy's gone, and when mommy comes back, they feel ambivalent. They're mad. They may even show apathy sometimes, but yet they really want mommy to be back. They show clinging behavior. This is a baby who's been treated, so the theory goes, in an inconsistently responsive way. Okay, this is all the land of infants and their caregivers, children and their parents. Okay, and if you notice, these labels correspond to those three paragraphs that we talked about. The securely attached infant or child has a lot of trust, doesn't have a lot of concern with being abandoned, and views itself because somebody is responding to them as worthy and liked and loved by their caregivers. These are the beliefs that they are picking up and storing away in their minds, their little baby minds. The avoidant person is one form of what's known as insecure attachment. This is a baby that, since mommy's never responding, is suppressing their needs to bond with others because that is the adaptive thing to do, shows a sense of detachment and very uncomfortable with intimacy. This was B, the paragraph B, which a nearly equal percentage of people here chose as chose a secure paragraph. Third, another form of insecure attachment, anxiety and concern over abandonment, expecting and fearing rejection, but still hoping for acceptance. Okay, this is interesting. This has all been documented and studied for years and years in the infant and childhood literature. And it wasn't until 1987 when Cindy Hazan and Phil Shaver, two social psychologists, social developmental psychologists, who actually just last year won an award as this paper that I'm telling you about, the 1987 paper, won an award for being one of the most influential papers in our field, because this was a paper that said, hello, social psychologists, check this theory out. Okay, maybe you can use the theoretical ideas of this theory and see how they may apply to how adults bond with one another. There may be some principles here that go beyond the infant-caregiver bond. And so Hazan and Shaver translated the notions of secure, avoidant, anxious, ambivalent attachment to adult terms, to those paragraphs that I had you read in the beginning and classify yourself into one of. So here are the percentages that they got in their 1987 paper and what people often get, this kind of breakdown. And it's actually international. It's cross-culturally. In many cultures, you see this kind of breakdown. I think in Germany and Japan, there's less secure attachment, interestingly. I'm not sure. There's definitely cross-cultural evidence for this. But in most cultures, you see secure attachment style being the highest number of people rating themselves in. Okay, what's going on at the adult level? Why is it that we might be able to use some attachment theory ideas to explain adult relationships? We're coming full circle again. And what I mean by that is we're going to talk about my favorite concept of schemas again. Okay, and what I mean by that, don't groan. What I mean by that is something very obvious, which is that when you're growing up and you're getting treated in relationships with your early relationship partners, which for most of us is our mommy and daddy, maybe siblings, we are storing information about the experiences we have in our memories. Just like I learned what a dog is and what I learned what a piano is based on my interactions with pianos and dogs, I'm learning what relationship partners are like. I am making inferences about my lovability, my competence, based on how you're treating me. And those experiences don't just get experienced and then thrown out the door, they get stored in memory. And you build schemas about what to expect in relationships, about what you must be like in other people's eyes, if they are to treat you with responsiveness or they are to treat you with neglect. The concept that the label that attachment theorists use for schemas are internal working models. But in our language, in the language of this class, we're talking about relationship schemas. Okay, these schemas have cognitive and affective components. Cognitive, my beliefs about others' availability, my beliefs about my lovability to others, cognitive, thoughts, beliefs, but of course affective components. Fears, anxieties, joy, hope, comfort with intimacy, discomfort with intimacy. So from the attachment model theory language, they talk about internal working models. These are these relationship schemas that you form, include beliefs and feelings related to one's worthiness of love and one's competence. If mommy is treating me in this wonderful way, she must think I'm lovable. She must think I'm a competent, worthwhile individual. With mommy always being there for me, I developed this template, this idea that people are generally out there and are going to be good to me. They're responsive. They're available. If you're somebody who grows up with parents that don't have any time for you, is it any wonder you store in your schemas about relationship partners, you can't always count on them. You better count on yourself instead. Okay? Like any other schema, these beliefs can change with new experiences. And you have many different kinds of relationships. But the idea here is that for many people, one kind of relationship model may be more chronic, maybe more elaborated than others. Okay, so if that's the case, we have these relationship experiences stored in memory. And of course that's the case because we store all of our experiences in memory. That means that these expectations, beliefs, feelings associated with relationships should impact our adult relationships. And indeed, they do. So in this 1987 paper, Hazan and Shaver translated attachment theory into adult language and gave us these descriptions, okay, that are about adult relationships, not about mommy and baby relationships. And not surprisingly, very intuitively, but it was groundbreaking at the time, 2.5 decades ago. Is it 2.5 decades ago? 13? Yeah. Yeah, 2.5 decades ago. They found adult analogs to attachment style differences on babies. In other words, adults who classify themselves as secure, they have all these positive beliefs about their relationships. They behave in positive ways